Jason, my friend, good to have you here and welcome to the show.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am super excited for this conversation. You have a very cool company over there. So for those that don't know you and your company, go ahead and give us the background here on yourself and the business.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Paul. Yeah. So just a quick background. It's we're D&D Enterprises. It's mainly a CNC machining company. We also do a lot of turning, 3, 4, 5-axis milling, mill turning, Swiss turning, conventional turning. So just a little bit of everything, really. Started in 1976. So we've been around a few years, almost getting ready to hit that 50-year mark. So that's a really important deal for us. So,
yeah.
But the company was started by my father and my uncle, just a small little block shop outside of the house. And so from there, they were really able, they're really the brains behind the operation, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But they just had a passion for machining and just building.
Right.
That history for us kind of, it didn't start out as all machining. We did a lot of fabrication work and, just a lot of manual products, obviously back in those days. Just really, I think like a lot of shops, when you start, you just kind of take anything you can get. It doesn't, it doesn't really matter. It's like, okay, we can do that. Well, if you need this, yeah, we can do that too.
Sure.
So that's kind of how that started. But, so in the mid 90s, we bought our first CNC first piece of CNC equipment. And so that was kind of nice to, see that transition starting. It was really based in the marine industry is really what got us going there. So kind of a little bit of an oddity, but yeah, not what you would traditionally think CNC is going to start you in.
Sure.
So from there, we ended up moving to a larger facility in about 97. And I graduated college in 99 and started here full time. So I just passed 25 years. So I still feel young, I think, but when I start to think about like those experiences, I'm like, maybe I'm not as young as I think I am. So I think a lot of us kind of feel maybe it's like we either feel really young or we feel really old. We don't know which one it is.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so from there, we've just been able to continue to grow, adding equipment, really focusing on aerospace. And that's really been the last 24 years. It's been a real huge focus for us has been the aerospace industry, getting our AS91 certification, ISO certification. And, really how we, like I was saying earlier, we did a lot of milling work and fabrication. So we kind of shifted away from the fabrication and we're really focusing on the milling. But as time went on, we also started doing a lot of assembly work, and a lot of times the assemblies needed fasteners or screws or studs and those types of things. So we're like, well, let's start doing turning. And so, so all of those things just kind of built into really what we are today, and having a real good diversification of product, and then even beyond the aerospace, shifting into doing some firearm components, still doing some marine products, doing some commercial and industrial products. So really just trying to focus on having a good mix of products.
Mm-hmm. What a cool background. Were your dad and uncle both machinists at other companies before they decided to open their own doors?
They were. And, so they were working at a machining plastics, and they both just decided, okay, I think it's just time for us to try something on our own. And that's just kind of what led them to take that leap. So, it was a situation where they had a mill and a lathe, and the two guys in the shop, and but I think we look back over time and we see relationships that were built, and there were definitely some people that were very instrumental in those in those times that, this relationship really helped blossom the company to get to the next level. And then this relationship with this company took us to the next level. And this, and so as you look back, you can kind of see those over time. You're in that work at the moment. You don't necessarily see which ones those are or gonna be, but when you look back 5-10 years from now, you're like, okay, making this decision with this company and this products, that really made a huge difference in our organization and the path that we're on.
Yeah. Yeah. That resonates so much for me. When you start a relationship, you win a job or a project,
Right.
it's just another project at the time, right? You don't know what that might turn into.
Right.
Way back in the Pro CNC days, there was a company right across the alley from us in the next building over that they made kits for adding like hydraulic accessories onto excavators.
Okay.
And I forget how it happened, but they're like, yeah, we need a clamp that is different than the traditional bolt down clamp. And we actually brainstormed with them, and we actually designed up an extrusion and got that made and started making some of these clamps. And that was probably in 1998.
Right.
And still to this day, the company that bought Pro CNC, now called True Life, they are still making those clamps,
Wow.
And they've made, I'm sure, millions of dollars worth of those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at the time it was just, hey, there's this project that, let's see if we can help out. So
right. Yeah.
That's cool. That's very cool.
That is cool. Mm-hmm.
When, so did you always know you were going to go into the family business, or tell us about your journey?
Yeah. I mean, I think honestly, I really didn't necessarily want to. I kind of had a passion for other things. I was always kind of around the shop, but when I went to school, I really wanted to do some type of like sports marketing, sports management, that type of thing. I just had a real passion for that, but I just knew that wasn't the right thing. All right. I know that's kind of weird to say that's what I want to do, but it wasn't the right thing. I just, at the same point in time, I knew like this is what I needed to do, even if, especially to start. Now, I mean, it was 100% the right decision. I don't doubt that a bit. And so, I was actually after I graduated high school, I had gotten accepted into a college and the engineering program, and that's what I was going to do. And, after, I guess this would have been maybe late July, probably the last week in July, my dad and we sat down and we were talking, and he was like, I think you should probably do something in the business instead of engineering. And I was like, you think? And he goes, yeah, I think that'd be a good call. And I was like, okay, let's give it a shot. So I did. So I definitely have like an engineering brain, and that's how it works and things. But, but I definitely decided to do the business side of things. So business management, accounting, those types of things. So I think that's kind of helped in the whole process too, from, how we made that transition as we've grown over the years, versus, being strictly on the engineering side. That would have probably changed our trajectory a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So I imagine your dad and uncle, obviously probably very skilled technically, machinists, tool makers, whatever,
Unbelievable. They could they were the kind that could solve anything, do anything, fix anything. That was definitely them. But, one of the things I found out was, and this is probably really a game changer for our business. When I was in school, my senior year of college, I did an independent study, and I really probably just did it because it was supposed to be like an easy class. Like, you just kind of like don't do anything for the last semester or whatever. And what I ended up deciding to do after meeting with my advisor was I did a survey of our the current customers of the company. And when I got the results back, I was like, wait, what? I was really shocked. Basically, I'll give you the synopsis was that your product is great. You guys deliver when you need to, but like we can't ever get anybody on the phone. And it was like, this is obviously before emails and such, back in the old fax days. But it was, like my dad and my uncle, they didn't want to be on the phone. They didn't want to talk to people. They wanted to be in the shop. And so they neglected that part. Not, it's not a bad thing. It's just the way it was. But I was able to really figure that out. So when I came in, that really became my focus was, okay, not only did I, spend time like kind of helping with the systems and the background work and those kind of things, but I put a huge focus on the customer relations side of things and making sure that there's constant communication with the customers, that, you know, when there are issues, we tell them that right away. Like that's been a huge thing for us is, you know, I don't want them to find out that there's an issue 2 days after it was due when they call me. Like I want to make sure that we're calling them and saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is where we're at, because I mean, you know, things happen.
Sure.
But so that's kind of how, you know, that really set the stage for us over the years. And I think that really had a big part to do with the growth as well.
Yeah. Wow. That's really fascinating. It's almost like a case study. Was that just like a general customer satisfaction survey, or?
Yeah, it was, I think. I mean, I don't know, it was 25 years ago. I'm trying to think back. But yeah, it was just like it would have been like a rated 1 to 5, you know, like how's the delivery, how's the quality, how's their communication. It just very basic.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, and that's something that we've been able to use a few times over the years. Like you don't really necessarily think about that.
Sure.
Using those sometimes in our industry, right? Obviously, I mean, you probably get 6 a week from somebody like, thanks for renting this vehicle. Give us your feedback, you know?
Sure.
But from a manufacturing standpoint, we really probably neglect that a little bit compared to service companies, if you will.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's so interesting. Now, tell me your thoughts on that versus, because customer satisfaction is probably one of the KPIs that ISO and AS has as one of their metrics. So how have you built that into your QMS at this point?
Yeah. So, well, that's a part of it. Obviously, you know, obviously we're tracking the hard data is easy, right? It's on time delivery and parts per million. Like that's just math. It's easy to do that. But you know, as far as AS is concerned, like you said, tracking that customer feedback, that's important. So what we do is we pull any feedback that we get from them that's outside of I guess like standard data, or, you know, maybe obviously NCRs or wait, not that we ever have any NCRs, but
of course not.
We never have non-conforming parts, but no, obviously that goes as part of that tracking. But as far as any feedback that we get from a customer, we log that into a log. So that way, you know, it's like, hey, look, you guys really bailed us out on this one. It can be very simple, but we take those emails and we compile those. And so that way, A, we have a record of those, and B, we can also share those with the team, because, you know, it's not just one person or 2 people doing it. It's an entire team that was able to take this customer request that they forgot to order something, and it's normally an 8-week lead time, and we turn it into 2 weeks because you expedited material, you worked over the weekend, you got the guys at plating and heat treat to do you a favor. I mean, it's the things that everybody that's in manufacturing has probably done a number of times. Yeah.
And do you have a formal, any kind of like formal survey process today where you collect collect objective feedback?
No. And honestly, I mean, as I'm sitting here talking about it, I'm thinking about, okay, what can we do now? Like it's rolling through my head. But like, Nate, I think we probably need to do this more formally. Yeah. Absolutely. It's not something that we've done formally, like on an annual basis or something. I think I've done it one other time, but now as they're sitting here thinking back, I'm like, why haven't I done that? I don't have an answer for that one, especially now with easy to get, you know, those things are easy to send out.
Survey Monkey or whatever.
Survey Monkey. Yeah. Whatever. No.
Yeah. We did that at our shop. We sent out a customer satisfaction survey every year, and tallied the results, gave ourselves a percentage, a score. It was a 1 out of 5. And then on management reviews, looked at especially the negative feedback, you know, whether it was with lead times or prices or whatever. I do think that's really important. So I'm curious to dig in a little more about the growth that, you know, maybe the company saw prior to you joining and having this, you know, this sort of aha moment about communication. And because I would maybe assume, without knowing, that once you started improving your communication practices for the company, that led to higher satisfaction, maybe more orders, new customers,
absolutely.
And the growth rate would have started to get more steep. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Excuse me. Yeah. So, when I joined, I want to say we had four pieces of CNC equipment, and I think there were maybe 9 people somewhere in that neighborhood, because we did, like I said, some fabrication, some machining, some assembly, that type of thing. It might have been 12 people. I can't quite remember. But yeah, that focus on that customer really became a huge part for us. And it's actually funny that you mentioned about that growth, and new customers or growing with current customers. We've been really, really fortunate in that our growth up until the last year had all really been organic, and not only with current customers growth, and then with selected customers, somebody that we may target that growth. So just last year, we hired our first salesman that we've ever had, full-time salesman that we've had. And so that was kind of a big step for us. But it was because the growth that we had over the years, up to 50 employees, you kind of hit this plateau, right? So it's like we're at the point where we've got all the right systems in place. We've got, all of the right things kind of operating, but you either need to go up larger or you need to go smaller. You're hitting that profitability ceiling that you just can't continue at the same pace without really starting to see an impact. And so that was the decision we made last year. It was like, okay, look, I don't want to go back to half. Let's go double. And so we're on that journey now. And, we did our first trade show last year. So
cool.
Just a local trade show. And that was in maybe November of last year. And then January, we did SHOT Show for the first time ever. So that was really only our second ever trade show. So we were just rookies, but we've definitely have seen some great prospects coming out of that. I want to say, 4 or 5 customers that have come from that.
Wow.
So, as we go, I think back, we went last year, we didn't know anybody. And now this coming, this next year, as we're preparing to go again, we're going to have, meetings and things scheduled. We're starting to, know people. And so that's kind of cool too. So it's because it's kind of a new industry for us.
Yeah. Super cool. Was the first one you did something like a design to part show or something like that?
It was.
Or?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
So yeah. So it was a design to part in Raleigh. Yeah.
Did you find customers at that one?
No, we really didn't. I wouldn't say that. I mean, I think it was a great experience. It was local, it's an hour drive, and it was a good experience. Just kind of get a better understanding for us. Cause I don't know. I've always been kind of a guy that's just, would just kind of do our thing, right? We're kind of in our bubble and do our thing. And then, there's a part of me is like, let's just keep doing that. And then the other part of me is like, no, we've got to branch out. Like, you need to be doing other stuff as well. All right. Right. But, so I think it's a challenge. That's something for me personally to kind of work on and to figure out, those are areas that I can kind of challenge myself a little bit, like doing a podcast.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's so good. It's so good. So, and so it was SHOT Show that got you like 4 or 5 new customers and new prospects and conversations.
Correct.
Yeah, that is fantastic.
Yeah.
What would you say to a shop that has never done a trade show, maybe isn't as focused on sales, doesn't employ a salesperson? What would you say to them about a reluctance to invest in that?
I think the trade show, what I really figured out is what you put into it is really going to help determine what you get out of it. Right. So most everybody's been to some type of trade show. And I'm a people person, right? I like people, but for some reason, I'm a people person, but I'm also a recluse at the same time. So I'm an introverted people person. I don't know if that's even a thing, but I feel like that's where I'm at. So, I'm totally fine to be in a setting and talking to people, but I'm also like just totally fine to be left alone. But one thing that I found out, so the sales guy that we have, Isaac, he's been spectacular, just a great work ethic, great character. And that was really one thing I was looking for. And what I found is he's a go-getter when it comes to the shows. And he kind of challenged me and kind of forced me to, like, you know, talk to people more, because I was like, oh, I can't just let him do it all, you know. So I like kind of felt bad sitting there. So we kind of made it a point that, like, we didn't let anybody walk by our booth without us talking to them, engaging them. Now, granted, they're not all buyers, you know, but we definitely had people that we would engage and say, hey, what are you doing? How you doing? How's your day going? What are you looking for? Just something to get the conversation started. Are you guys ever buy machine parts? And they're like, no, not really. And after 3 minutes of conversation, they'd be like, oh, well, hang on, I got this drawing here. And you're like, what? Like, what? And it happened more than once. It probably 5 or 6 times through the day. But it was just the fact that we just kind of made it this game. Like, you know, it really kind of did become into this fun little thing. Like, hey, you know, don't let them get past you. Like, you've got to communicate with them. And so that's the big thing is, you know, get out of that comfort zone and just talk to people, get them to stop. Because I mean, anybody that's been to a show and you kind of walk through, it's just kind of like you're looking like there's so much at a show. There's so much to see. And you can't see it all. So you're just walking down down an aisle. There's people on your left, people on your right, and you just kind of glancing back and forth, right, back and forth. And, you know, so if somebody doesn't stop you, you're just going to keep walking, right? Unless you see something that's just so mind-boggling that you just have to stop. And that's not CNC machining, right? There's probably not something so crazy that we're going to get people to stop. In fact, a good example, we made this flag, this huge flag, 6 foot, and it was incredible. I mean, everybody that saw it was just like blown away, but I can't tell you how many people, this was hanging behind us, I can't tell you how many people came to the booth. They were talking to us for 30 to 60 seconds. And we're like, what do you think about the flag? And they're like, holy cow, I didn't even see it there. And I was like, it just really made us rethink, like, you know, like it's not about spending a lot of money, because we went dirt cheap on this thing. Like we, you know, bare bones, everything, but it was all about the engagement. It's not about this big fancy booth. And, you know, obviously I know the big guys at these shows, they got to do that. That's fine. But you can do it on a budget. You really, really can. We did. So
that is such good advice. And I can 100% relate to the comfort of sitting behind your front table and just like waiting for people to come talk to you, which they're not going to do.
They're not going to do it.
And getting out of, because I think people might, you know, may not believe it, but I'm kind of like you know, I'm a little bit of an introvert, although I'm happy to talk to people at the same time, but it is definitely puts me outside of my comfort zone to like interrupt somebody as they're walking by. You're like, hey buddy, how's it going today? You know, what are you doing? But yeah, some of those conversations turn into your next $1 million contract that you never would have had the chance to have.
Yeah. And I mean, you're going to have guys that are just trying to peddle stuff, or, you know, and that's fine. I mean, we're all, you know, everybody's somewhere, and that's okay. But like you said, I mean, you just never know. And so, you know, and sometimes it's just the most unsuspecting person too. You know, you just, you can't look at somebody and decide their worth, right? You know, and that's a great lesson in life. That's obviously a lesson in business, but that's probably more important in life, you know, because at the end of the day, I mean, everyone has worth, right? And honestly, I think all of our worth is equal. But it's a matter of, you know, same situation. This kind of translates here, is that you don't know who is who or who's what or anything. So we've all heard the story about the farmer in overalls that goes into the car, you know, the fancy car dealership and whatever, you know, they don't want to help. Nobody wants to help him, but he, you know, he has all the money, you know, whatever. So
absolutely. Well, that's, I mean, just the takeaways for people listening, right? Get out of your comfort zone, do a trade show, hire a salesperson, you know, get out from behind the table and just put yourself out there and connect. And you don't know what's on the other side of that discomfort. So that the decision to do a trade show, it sounds like you guys were still growing reasonably well, probably. But you were deciding to really double down. Like, were you busy? Like, were your machines busy? But it's like, we need to take it to the next level.
Yeah, we were busy, and we wanted to go to the next level. And we've really kind of hit this plateau, probably 3 times. And, but it's a situation where, obviously the world around us has a lot to do. The economy has a lot to do with it. And also I will say the competition or the fact that product moves overseas, and that's something that we were fighting. So, we'd kind of been to this situation before, maybe about, 2016. And then we had really ramped up, built a large product line, and then it got moved to, overseas, low cost country.
Oh,
right. So
geez.
boom, there you go. That's a big chunk, 30% or 20% or whatever. I don't know. So what do? You build it back up, and then COVID hits, right? So we're back at that level. COVID hits, and we weren't one of the, we obviously were able to maintain and to survive, but there were a lot of shops that didn't make it through that time. We were fortunate enough to do it, but at the same point in time, we definitely had to make changes, had to make reductions, and business goes down. So we build it back up. And then, last year we, had started building again and had another product line after getting it developed. It moves overseas. So it's like, come on, it's like, but I think for us, it's that situation. So we focused on a few areas and kind of trying to be a little more strategic in the direction that we wanted to go, the products that we wanted to make and the industries we wanted to be in. But, what I want to be able to do is surpass that, that 50 employees. I feel like getting to that 75 employees or 100 employees, it's going to be a whole new animal. It really is. But I think for us, I feel like it's the right thing to do where we're at, location, community, those types of things. I think it's going to be the right move, considering our current customers, the customers we have the ability to support, certifications, all those things. We've got the opportunity to kind of help in a lot of different areas.
Mm-hmm. Were those, product lines that moved offshore, those are obviously part numbers or packages of part numbers that you were doing for a customer that they decided to outsource. Right. Were those in aerospace or defense or some other
all aerospace
sector?
Yeah,
all aerospace, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So, yeah,
so it seems like maybe it's maybe higher volume commercial aerospace, not defense aerospace.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah, commercial aerospace, higher volume products, absolutely. And so it's a situation though where, I think we've all seen that situation where product going overseas is a challenge, to our economy. Our domestic economy, the entire United States. We look at what manufacturing looks like now versus what it was 20 years ago. And then, with every single industry and how, we can buy cheap products, online and, it's not what it used to be. And, that impacts every industry.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So being strategic about which ones you're focused on, which ones might be more resilient or less likely to go offshore, or where you can be most competitive and make a better margin. Yeah. Such important things to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a huge mix of it, because you've got the opportunities to look at different markets, and that's the other thing that we've really been able to try to focus on too, is that there's some industries that we're better at than others. And there's some products that we're better at than others. And that's the conversation that I've had with the sales team is like, okay, you tell me, this is from them. You tell me, what are we best at doing? And that's what I'll go sell, because it's that's probably the other thing I would also say to people is that just going and trying to sell blanket products, there is something okay with that, but there's also something that's really important about identifying the direction that you want to go, the industry you want to be in, the type of products you want to do. So, a perfect example is as we sit down and we look at, our equipment, I'll just make an example. You've got a Swiss machine or a mill turning machine, something very specific. If I've got capacity on one of those, then that's what I want the sales team to focus on. I don't want them to go out and sell 5-axis milling. I want them to sell Swiss turning. So, So that's the other part that I think is really important. And that doesn't require a salesman for that. That's something that,
Sure.
Individuals can do, but sometimes it's easy for us, especially I think if you're light, if your books are a little light at the moment, or your machines are a little bit light, you're just willing to take anything. And I'm not saying that's wrong, because I think we've all been there. Right. And, I mean, I've looked at jobs that I was like, I have no idea how we'll do this, but let's figure it out.
Sure.
So, but I think, that's kind of one thing I feel like really helps get you to that next level, is when you can identify these are the types of jobs that work well for our shop. These are the types of jobs that we can provide quality on. These are types of jobs that we can get them on time. And that way we can be a great vendor for our customer and make them want to buy from us again.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think the challenge, there's also a little piece of that too, and not to interrupt you for your next question, but as I think about, one of the things that I've struggled with is, like, if you're an extremely good vendor, and I think this is where the communication comes in. But if you're an extremely good vendor, your job is to make your buyer forget you, right? Because you want your buyer to place orders, and now everything's on a portal, or, it's all electronic. And so for a lot of customers, and so you want them to order parts, and you want to deliver parts, and there to be zero interaction, right? Your name never comes up on any meetings, on the quality reports, nowhere. But here's the challenge. If your name never shows up, they don't know how good of a job you're doing.
Sure.
And so I think that's a challenge, because I've definitely seen situations where there have been, maybe a troubled vendor with a customer, and because they're on a weekly basis communicating, they're building relationships, even though it's started as a negative reason, they're building relationships, and and that helps to build those relationships. So the next time something comes around and they need help, they might naturally go to them, even though it started as kind of a negative thing. So.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Jason, so much good stuff there. I completely agree that your job is to, I've said this a number of times, that a buyer is in the risk mitigation business, right? They want to know when they place an order with a shop, it's going to come in on time, good paperwork, delivery, quality, and they're not going to have to stress and worry about it.
Right.
So yeah, that means your name isn't coming up in your late delivery report or whatever, right?
Right. 100%.
But at the same time, they're not, your name isn't top of mind. So I'll go to another guest I had last year that makes it, or a couple of them now have said this, they make an absolute priority to go physically get in front of their buyers on a quarterly basis. Right. It's like, I'm just going to come and visit you, take you to lunch, whatever. Just sit down and have a, 30-minute meeting even. And speaking about, growing organically and getting types of work, sitting down with that buyer and saying, here's what we did with you last year or the last quarter. How's it been going on your side? What other challenges are you having in other places? By the way, we just bought this new machine. We can do this type of work. I realize, I see we're getting a lot of milling from you. We don't get a lot of turning. Do you have a lot of turn parts? Oh yeah, we do. And I just haven't been giving you those RFQs because I haven't thought about it.
That's right.
It can turn into, such a deeper relationship and so much additional work. Coming back to a point you said earlier about doing assemblies, like a lot of times a buyer won't think of a company as someone that can deliver a complete value-added assembly. But if you can demonstrate your ability to manage that type of project, it relieves so many headaches, because instead of, dealing from 5 vendors and then assembling it themselves, you're like, why don't we just provide this turnkey to you? Right.
Yeah.
I know that worked hugely at our company. And we were doing, we did assemblies that were 100 part numbers, and we did testing and boxed it and put our customer's label and ready to deliver it turnkey to their customers. And we did 100% of it. And that is so much harder to move to other vendors or to an offshore. So if you can get in at that level, it's a really secure place.
Yeah. Well, I think, we've kind of worked on that a few situations, but what I've kind of found too is you've got to have a company that the engineering is on board with it. Too, because like I had a product that we worked, we were able to save cost and floor space for a vendor. I mean, for a customer as a vendor. Mm-hmm. And I was able to take that to the next level up, from a, authority standpoint. And they're like, we love it. We love it. Let's do it. But they said the next thing we got to do is we've got to get engineering to make new bombs because, I can't buy this at this level because it's not built that way in our system. So we'll get them to do that. So it'll take a couple of weeks, but let's work through this. And I'm like, okay, a couple of weeks go by, I contact them. So that was like 8 years ago. And so, so it just, that's long gone by now, but that's the other important aspect of it. So you've got to not only sell, I think it's the buyer is important there, but you've also got to get somebody in authority to sign off on it. So they will direct that engineering team to be like, okay, yes. If you're working with bigger groups, because if you're working with a smaller group, then they can do that, no problem. But if you're working with a bigger group, that's an important part. But what you said about putting your data together and sitting down in front of them, that is a great suggestion, because it's one thing to have a meeting and it's simple enough to go in and you want to talk about like maybe what's just been going on in the last week or whatever, but that is critical, like really capturing some data and saying, okay, here's how many parts we've delivered. And here's our score as we've measured it. Here's our on-time delivery, because, we all know that sometimes, especially when you're dealing with larger customers, their information is not always accurate. And, many hands involved in it. It may not be accurate. And even when you identify that, it might be a challenge to get it fixed. And so, but being able to sit down in front of somebody with hard data, that's going to definitely, really, that's great. That's a great advice.
Yeah. There's some just very tactical things that I think can make a difference on this, especially when you get into those bigger organizations, because, when you come in with your own sort of self-assessed scorecard, you'd be like, in the last quarter, we delivered 50 deliveries to you. We show being, 96% on time. Sorry about those 4%, and they're like, well, on my report card, you're only 72% on time. And we're like, whoa, let's take a look. It's like, here's the signature that we delivered this, on Tuesday the 5th. And they're like, oh, we didn't receive that until the 6th because, maybe it was delivered in the afternoon and that guy went home early and they received it the next morning and you're late, right? According to their ERP system. And that may turn into it may, in the worst case, it may turn into you getting kicked off the ASL, right? It's like, oh, this customer's or this vendor's not good enough performance. We're not sending them any more bids anymore, right?
Yeah.
When legitimately,
Yeah, no, I totally have been there before, because especially with the larger customers, a lot of times they'll have that list of like grow, maintain,
100%.
Or I don't know, I can't think of the terminology now, but they're like, okay, we want to divest move. And, and if they're not looking at accurate data, that's a really critical part. And I've seen that situation with multiple customers, especially, like I said, like the smaller companies, maybe not as much, but the larger companies, they just got so many people working. It's the one thing I've seen happen is they might write a non-conformance against us, for a product that we delivered 8 months ago, and it's, maybe it's just rejected because it's the wrong revision. But we delivered it 8 months ago, and 3 months ago it changed revisions. Well, that's, it's not our fault. There's nothing we could do about it. But now but the person who's writing that NC says, oh, it's a vendor's responsibility. They check that box. It goes on against you. So, but sure. Now, do we have parts that are rejected from time to time? Absolutely. We're not going to be perfect. Nobody is, but I think, if we're working to improve ourselves, that's what most everybody just really wants to see, is that you're working to improve yourself and that you're working to do the best job that you can.
Yep.
Because there's a human factor to most people too.
Of course,
not everyone, not everyone, but most.
Yeah. When you sit down and have that conversation with the data, you're showing that you care. You're showing that you want to improve. You're showing that you want to grow with this customer. and you're building that relationship. So they're more likely to, sort of on your behalf, because if a buyer's just super swamped and busy, like most are, you'll be like, yeah, I understand our data is not accurate, but I don't have time to dig into it and fix it. But if you have a better relationship, they're like, yeah, Jason's my good buddy. I really count on them. I'm going to go ahead and push it in the receiving area and get those numbers fixed. Because they want to keep doing business with you, and they know that scorecard's got to be good.
That's right. 100%.
And then I want to come back to the notion of sort of niching down and deciding what you're really good at. I've had a number of guests on the show that talk about like this whole notion, the riches are in the niches. I think it's so true when it comes to this industry. Right. If you're trying to be just a jack of all trades, job shop for anything that crosses your desk, that is not a recipe for long-term value and growth and profitability, and even having customers that think of your business when they have something that crosses their desk. They're like, oh yeah, these guys are really good at cockpit display panels or at manifolds with these kind of parts, or and it's hard to be good at everything. So if you can execute competently on lots of things, or just absolutely crush it and kill it on a smaller set of parts, the latter is going to be more profitable all day long. So
yeah, I think that is definitely, a challenge, because especially if you're trying to grow, you're willing, like I said earlier, sometimes you're just willing to take anything, and there is a danger in that, because sometimes that can just totally wreck you, and really put you behind where you wanted to be. And,
Absolutely.
I'm guilty of doing that from time to time. We've had some of those situations. But I think, the other thing that I've noticed for us is, our traditional background was milling. And I felt like that was definitely one thing that we were best at, whether it was 3, 4, or 5 axis. But what I'm starting to see now, and seeing a lot of demand for turned products or mill turned products, something that we can put onto, a Swiss machine or a mill turned machine, and be able to get product off that's complete. Maybe we're reducing the number of operations. We're using bar feeders. You can run some of the particular items unattended overnight, those types of things. There's a huge demand for some of those very intricate parts that's, it's got cross holes or milled pockets or whatever that you just don't want to take out of the machine and put to another operation, just because you'll lose some of that. You'll lose some of that. But yeah, so I think for us, that's kind of what I feel like we've kind of transitioned from a mill heavy shop to more we're building now. I feel like we're building the Swiss and the mill turning side, still doing a lot of the milling work. Don't get me wrong. But I think one thing we've also have to realize is that, as if that's a direction that we want to go, then we have to realize that there may be some pains that come along with it. And that's going to be part of that business growth, that we're not going to just step in and take this product and just step in and be able to just be experts at a new process, or experts with a new type of machining. We've got to do the learning, just, almost, if you think about it, it's a totally separate company, and we're going to start out and we're going to have 1 or 2 machines, and we've got to figure these things out. And, and obviously having competent people and employees and engineers and programmers and setup guys and operators. I mean, that's a huge part of it. Your workforce is vitally important, but you've really got to make sure that you're focused on not only the work that you're bringing in, like you said, but then when you do have something, make sure that that's something that you're willing to take the hit on a little bit. You're willing to deal with that learning curve in order to make it long term. If you're not willing to if you don't want it to be long term, then it's not even worth it to take that short term fight.
Yep. Yeah. No, I love what you're saying there. And for sure, just when I talk about niching down, I don't mean only into like one type of thing. 3-axis milling. It's being intentional about becoming good and having the equipment and the processes and the knowledge for different types of products. I know for sure I've been guilty of, things got a little light. So we took something that we wouldn't normally take, and it absolutely killed us. It was a $10,000 job, and it cost us $25,000 to make it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
It's like here's your parts, and here's $15,000 worth of losses.
That's right. Why do we do that?
God, it's so painful.
You want me to weld this underwater? No problem. Have you ever welded before? Nope.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So part of the solution to that is investing in sales and marketing, so you don't hopefully get to the point where you're light enough on work that you take the things you shouldn't be taking in the first place. And you're either spiraling up in a good way or spiraling down, without that positive sales pressure. Man, so this section has been really juicy and longer than, but like I said, we get into a rabbit hole, and it's just it's the best. Yeah. So you mentioned workforce development and having the right people, the setup people, the operators, the programmers, inspectors. Let's talk about how you're about 50 people today, or are you a little more than that now?
Yeah. Just at 50.
Okay. What's your strategy on workforce development? It's one of the biggest problems that every shop faces these days. How do you totally tackle it?
Yeah. So I think, one of the things that I think is really important, is just retention. Retention is a huge part of our business, because while workforce development is important, we also don't want our workforce to be departing. We want to make sure that we're retaining our workforce, because it's so much easier to retain someone than it is to train somebody new. Right. And especially if you've got somebody that's got several years of experience, starting over with somebody else, that's just not the best scenario. So retention is a really key factor. And so I think that comes with, obviously there's cost involved with that. There's, the hard dollars, there's the benefits. There's the flexibility for us. What we're currently doing, we work 4/10s. And so we have Fridays off, and there's a little bit of flexibility there that, you can kind of make up some time if you need to. But you obviously have to draw the line between, like, hey, miss any time you want to, versus, if you need to be out because your child has something at school, I want you to do that. Like I want to go to my kids' stuff at school. So I would expect you to want to go to your kids' stuff at school. And if you need to leave 2 hours early and we make it up on Friday, like I can handle that, because, all I'm asking is communication. We want to communicate, make sure we're all on the same page. So that's important. But I think the training part of it is really making sure that your team is really working to develop a team internally that's willing to share with one another. We've all been in places where there's people that are willing to share. We've also been in places where everybody wants to just kind of keep their information to themselves, and they don't really want to help other people. And that's, I think part of it is building that environment that people are willing to help and to share for the newcomers. Because if you think about it, you were there one time before, you were at a point where you may be like, what's micrometers? What are calipers? What are these pin gauges for, And so, really taking the time, and we've worked to really try to put together some training information, and honestly, like, we're not exceptional at it. We're not phenomenal. But it's something that we have on our list of things, that one area that we want to improve as an organization, because I think as we go forward, as we grow, you're going to definitely have new people coming in that have less experience. And so being able to get them trained up on being able to use measuring devices, being able to learn to change tools, being able to, just be aware of just some of the thought processes, because, I've been on the floor and I'll see somebody that's like, it's like classic 3-axis mill, and they'll take a part out and they'll lay it on over, they'll take a part out and they'll start to do some deburr, and then they'll, blow the part off, and then they'll stack another one. And then eventually they'll get to loading the next part. And I'm like, stop, wait a minute. It's like, all right, you got to get one ahead, pull one out, put one in, start the machine. Then we can work on deburring and doing these other things, And so, but I mean, most of the time they're not doing it on purpose. They just don't know any different, and it's not their fault. I mean, and so it's just, making sure that we're creating an environment that we're willing to stop and spend some time with somebody and get to know them and talk to them and help them and coach them. And so that's a big part of it. And are we perfect at it? Absolutely not. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to do because we've all got other stuff to do,
Absolutely.
But I think that's a huge aspect. Working with, some of the local high schools or local community colleges, those are important things as well. But, I think there's a whole progression of things that you can look at, but, really focusing on retention and then training individuals, and I think, even making sure that you've got, for the job that you're going to be running, making sure that you've got great information prepared. So that way, the next time this product gets run, if it's not the same individual, they don't have to have memorized it. They can look at their data and say, okay, well, this is how we set it up. And this is, these are the tools that I need. And this is these are the different snags that they hit last time. And so, making sure that data is captured from one job to the next. So that way you're not fighting the same thing over and over again.
Oh, so much truth you just dropped right there. So do you think that when you invest in training people that helps you retain the people that have a growth mindset in the first place?
I think it can. I don't know. I mean, my non-scientific self says 50-50.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, because I think it's the individual because, one of the other things that I'll tell you, one of the other things that we've decided a few years ago is I don't want to have anybody working here that doesn't want to be here and is not, and that brings a bad attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you come to work and you bring just a crappy attitude and just sour about everything all the time, we all know those people, then it's not worth it. Even if you're an exceptional machinist, it's not worth it for you to be here ruining the environment for everybody else. It's just not worth it. And so 100%. I would rather move on. And that's one of the things we tell people in the very first interview is like, listen, this is our expectations. And if this isn't going to be where you're at, then it's not going to work out because that's not what we're going to be we're not going to put up with it,
Mm-hmm.
So I think once you weed out that aspect of it, wait, what was your question again? Oh, the training.
About people with a growth mindset.
Yeah. No, so once you can weed through those people, then yes, 100%. That is because they definitely see that you care about them. You're putting the effort in, they're putting the effort in, and you're building a relationship with people, and your team around them. And when everybody's putting in that same effort, then they're willing to keep putting in the effort. But whenever somebody's like dragging it down, it just starts to, in the back of somebody's head, at first it's okay. It's not a big deal. But then the next thing a few weeks go by and it's like, oh man, and it just starts dragging everybody down. And that's just not, that's the hard, you can't fight it. Right.
Yeah.
You can't fight
absolutely. It. Do you tie the learning and the cultural aspect into any kind of core values that are published in the company?
No, not officially. I think, it's one of those things that I think you see it. But openly, I've not been exceptional about like publishing, I'm not an inspirational guy where we've got like 12 quotes on the wall, like we will do this and we will do this and we won't do this. I mean, we've had those conversations in meetings, these are the things, we will not accept this or we will not accept that, or we will always do these things. But no, I think that's where, I think as someone trying to lead an organization, that's definitely not one of my strong points, but it's definitely an area that I need to work on a little more. At times I want to be that like inspirational football coach, that just grabs you by the face mask and just gets you hyped up and ready to go out and crush somebody. And I'm just not, I'm just not that guy. So,
well, I appreciate you having the humility to share that. I know that as I interview, especially larger, shops, it's remarkable, like the correlation between like size and success of a shop. And if they do have published core values that they just, they reinforce every day. And, cause like you say, when someone doesn't, even changing out parts on a machine, if they don't know that it's important to hit cycle start again, just because that makes more revenue because the machine's running more often.
Right.
They might not, if you don't have it on the wall that integrity is really important to your company, they may not think of that as, oh, I got to do the right thing here, even if someone's not watching. Right.
Right.
Anyway, that's appreciate you sharing that. On the employee side, on the training side, do you have maybe different positions that you say, well, if you learn these things, you can move to, a setup level 2 or a programmer, and here's how, that might compensate with pay or whatnot?
Yeah. So what we have is just, it's basically 3 brackets as far as that's concerned. So you've got like your operator, that's you're going to be in this range of pay, and there's a list of things that you should be able to do. And then the next one would be somebody that's able to do setup. Same type of thing. This is your expected range of pay. And then obviously, people, longevity or talent are going to be somewhere inside of that. And then the last one would be like troubleshooting. They got the ability to do all the setups, do all the troubleshooting, those types of things. And that's not quite to the engineering programming level, but they're,
Sure.
So we kind of have 3 different areas that people are going to be able to work into. And so it's really up to that individual to be able to decide kind of where they want to be. And, we've had the conversation internally that, man, I wish this guy would do more or whatever. And, or this gal. And at the end of the day, one of the conversations I've had with some of my managers is like, you know what, it's okay. Like, as much as I want this person and I like this person and I want them to do this next higher job, they don't want to, and they're at this pay scale, and they're happy with what they're doing. Just let them continue to do it, because we need people to operate the machines. Like, this guy comes into work every single day and he gets 200 parts off the machine day in, day out. We know it's going to happen just like clockwork. Is he going to get 205? Probably not. Is he going to get 195? Probably not. I mean, he's going to get his 200, and he's going to just take his time, and they're going to be right. And could somebody faster get 300? Maybe they could, but you know what? We're not paying him at a higher level. We're paying him like right where he's at. He's happy. So just leave it alone, And so, so sometimes there's, I think there's sometimes you got to manage those expectations that, is faster always better? Maybe not always. Is it better? Yeah. Sure. I mean, I'd like to say it is, but that's maybe not always the case. If you've got somebody that's just happy doing what they're doing every single day, then, if you're weighing out and calculating, okay, the value that we're getting is adequate, then I'm okay with it. So, I don't know. Maybe that's the philosophy. No, that's not normal. I don't know.
I think that's really good advice. And we definitely had folks in our company that just, they would show up exactly on time. They would clock into jobs and they'd work all day long, on jobs. Whenever that machine stopped, they had the door open, they were changing parts. Yep. And maybe had their music on, they were just in a rhythm, and they were just so consistent. If they weren't the highest performer of all time, there's huge value in that consistency and just kind of like the shop that's not a problem that doesn't come up in the buyer conversations. The employees that are just rock solid and like you can count on them. That's worth its weight in gold. So you can 100% work on other things.
Right. Yes.
We're coming up on probably the top of our time here. I wanted to just have you share, you've already shared so many sort of knowledge bombs and really important things that I think have led to your success over the years. If you could just distill it into maybe just 1 or 2 of the decisions you think are, help get you here as a company, as an organization, what would you put at the top of that list?
Wow, I wasn't prepared for this one. No, I think a few things I can probably touch on is the individuals that you surround yourself with are very, very important. And I'll say this, we've all heard it and it's kind of cliche. But as someone who's trying to grow a company, I feel like one of the great things you can do is work yourself out of a job. You can find an area that needs to be improved, spend the time to work and improve it, and then find somebody else to take your place. And if you can, I can't remember who should be, who specifically has said it, but I mean, we all know it, that it's like, hire somebody that's smarter than you are. Right. And if you can do that, then great. And if you can't, that's okay, because, that may not always be the case. But if you've built this certain thing and you can bring somebody in to then take control of it, all the answers, how it works. And so you're there as a good resource to them and can help coach them, teach them, and then in the end, answer any questions and challenges they may come up with later. And so I think that's a big part in building a business. You can't do it all at once. You can't grow from zero. You can't go from 0 to 100 in one shot. Like, you have to spend time and find areas of your business that you want to develop, whether that's quality, whether that's assembly or milling or turning or just shipping or receiving. Like, I think that's a critical part. Like, if you can't get parts packaged properly and preventing damage, I mean, we've all been there. We've all had this, we spent 3 weeks making this job, and then you get a call and it's like, hey, all these parts are damaged. You're like, what? And so, I mean, that's critical. And sometimes even that team can be overlooked because they are as important as the person receiving the material, as the person, that's running the milling machine, as the quality inspector. Absolutely. They're all just equally important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, surrounding yourself with good people, building the systems, letting them own it. That is like a superpower to being able to work on your business more often and do the strategic things that only you can do as the owner.
Right. Yeah.
'Cause I can, looking, fairly deeply inside, hundreds and hundreds of shops. I can see the people that are good at delegation and have this mindset, and I see the people that are not. And the ones that are not are literally running around like chickens with their head cut off every day, their pants on fire. Yeah. And there's not enough time in their day to get everything done.
Right.
And that
who wants to live like that?
That key principle is so important. So I really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's some such sage advice to wrap up on. Jason, if people want to learn more about D&D Enterprises, how do you suggest they reach out to you to learn more?
Yeah. So just LinkedIn would probably be the main thing, just Jason Davis. And then also our website, www.ddent-usa.com. And it's a great way to connect.
All right. And I will make sure those links are in our show notes. But Jason, perfect. You have delivered. I know you wanted to do really well on this, and man, you did fantastic. You had such fantastic advice and really relatable. You clearly know your business, just so many things like scrapping parts because they weren't packaged well. Just the little things, the little stories that just come out. You're like, oh yeah, this guy's been in the seat before.
Been there, done that.
Thank you for sharing everything. I know there's going to be a lot of takeaways, and
thanks, Paul.
Appreciate you being on the show.
All right. Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.